Hello again, back with the Joker here. Time to do a few more upgrades. This time I'm going to show you how to change out your spark plugs and change out your ignition coils. Ignition coils are not something that typically goes bad. Your spark plugs you should change out about every 50,000 miles. Once you're got your tools all set out, you want to make sure that you have the appropriate tools. In order to remove the ignition coil, which is what your ignition coil looks like when it's removed, has two 10mm bolts on the top which secure it in. Now you can cheat a little bit if you can get your tool to actually fit in, and you can use your impact driver on the bolts to remove them, but do not use the impact driver on the bolts to install them, because you risk the chance of it twisting and snapping the head of the bolt off, and then you're going to have to remove the whole thing, drill and tap that brass piece, and then reinstall the whole thing, and it's a whole lot of headache. So it's better just when you're installing, once you get to the installation part, just use your hand tools. So you're going to need a wrench, 10mm socket, you're going to need a second wrench, an extension, and a spark plug specific tool. When you get your spark plug socket, this particular one's a 5/8 Stanley, I would always go with some type of name brand or brand that has a lifetime guarantee, especially with spark plug tools, because if you buy a no-name brand, a lot of times right here at the center is a rubber core. Now that rubber core with the lesser or unknown brands, they typically don't glue in or put in an efficient method, and then when you try to remove this spark plug, that rubber core pops off and it sits on top of the spark plug, and you'll never know it. Or it could fall out and fall down the hole where your spark plug is, right down in here, and that's a whole lot of headache. So when you get your spark plug socket, you want to make sure that that rubber piece is in there good. If you do buy a cheaper brand, use a screwdriver, dig out that rubber core, put some crazy glue on it, and then push that core back in so that it glues in place. You don't have to worry about the crazy glue heating or cooling or anything else like that, because you should be working with a cool engine to begin with, since you're pulling out a core engine component and you don't want to burn yourself. But you're going to use your spark plug socket. Now the hardest spark plugs to get to are the ones right here by your fuse box and power box. Your ignition coil, which sits inside here, is also fairly difficult to get to. Now these are just rubber boots, so when you get into them you can flex, try not to bend too hard, flex your engine oil to the back and just flex, and you can see how it bends slightly as it goes in, and you just finagle them around. So that's what it looked like when it was installed. And when you have to remove it, you're going to pull straight up until it hits the engine oil stick, flex it around, and then you're going to twist it up and remove it. Now once you're at this part, with this being in the way, you cannot get your socket with extension on into that hole. It's not possible, so you have to remove this box. This box is pretty easy to remove. It's just two pull tabs here and here, and then one pull tab on the back end, and that allows you to move and manipulate your box away. You don't have to unplug all the wires or anything, you just need it out of the way enough that way you can get in. Now you're not going to have enough room to have it on the socket to get in, and you're going to kind of have to angle your way in till you get down. Now once you get down, you can see how far down that gets into the spark plug well. You're just going to twist around until you feel that it seats on the bolt, and then push it down, and you'll feel the top of the spark plug push into that rubber cap. Now I had already installed the new spark plugs, and you can see I removed the old spark plugs from the spark plug well. And what I'll show you is what's going on inside of that well. When you first come down, the spark plug is installed, and this is going to come down on top of here until it hits on top. So then you just kind of twist slowly and push until it finds its way around the top of the bolt and locks in on the bolt. And you'll feel when it doesn't go any further. And that way when you start to twist, again, lefty loosey, righty tighty, twist left, it breaks it free. And as it twists out of the engine itself, the bolt comes loose, and then that rubber core holds your spark plug in place, which is why it's very important to check that rubber core. Once you get your spark plug out, just give it a good yank, double check to make sure that that rubber core is still inside, and you'll move on to your next one. So what I'll show you now is from the beginning how to remove your ignition coil. I had already broken this free with my power tool, but I can't get to the bottom one, so I'm going to move in with my regular hand tool. And I just get it broke free, which is just enough that I can use my fingers to loosen it, because I'm quicker twisting with my fingers than I am trying to twist with a hand tool. Once I have that loose enough, I can pull out my entire ignition coil. And my ignition coil is held in place by the wires. I'm going to depress the release button right here at the top and pull out the ignition coil. I'm going to take my wire and set it off to the side where it's going to be out of my way. And once again, going to transition to my socket. Every time I do this, I'm going to look into the socket and double check my rubber core to make sure it's in there. Feed it down into the well, and now I'm just going to twist around until I feel it bottom out. Once it's bottomed out, lock my tool on top of my extension, and once again, lefty loosey, righty tighty, start twisting it out. Now with these new Hemis, they have 2 spark plugs per cylinder. So since it's an 8-cylinder engine, that means 16 spark plugs that we got to replace. And each set of spark plugs has its own coil sitting on top of it. So it's 8 coils, 16 spark plugs if you're replacing both coils and spark plugs. Now, coils themselves typically don't go bad all that often. It's not something that you have to replace. I'm replacing them because I'm upgrading from the standard coil to an MSD blaster coil ignition set. It's supposed to increase the spark for your plug to give you higher voltage when it goes in there, and that's supposed to increase or give you an improvement over timing, acceleration, not necessarily improving horsepower, but just the electrical firing components of your engine itself. And then you extract your spark plug just like so. I have my spark plug out. I'm going to switch over to my new spark plug. Now if you're using alternate types of spark plugs or unknown name brand of spark plugs, you're going to have to use a spark plug gap, and you're going to have to actually make sure that the gap, which is the space between the igniter and the ground, is at the appropriate measurement per factory model. Now NGK is a nice company, and I always like to use the NGKs because as long as you're using the NGKs, they come pre-gapped for where your manufacturer's recommended gap is. So I don't have to check these. And what I'm doing is I'm switching out from the LTZR5A1 from these. So the PLTZR5A is the gap, measure of coil, and what kind. The P stands for platinum. Now these are the LTZR5As also, which means how many threads I have and the gap on itself. But it doesn't have the P because this is not a platinum plug. I'm switching out to an iridium plug. There are benefits and detractions to both. Platinum's a very precious metal and it's very expensive. Iridium, I don't believe, is anywhere near as expensive as platinum. But when you're dealing with platinum, because of how high priced it is, typically they're only platinum coated or have a platinum core. Whereas iridium, they can use the whole piece of iridium right through, and iridium is also more heat resistant than what platinum is. Platinum can warp, melt, bend, and iridium's a little bit more of a dense or a heavier metal than what platinum is. You're going to insert your spark plug into your spark plug tool. Again, it's going to hold in there, and you want to be very, very careful that you don't bang around or bend this electrode that's on the end. So we're going to be very carefully inserting it down, and then once I have it down, I'm going to rest the socket on the well wall until I can feed it down into the hole. And again, I don't want it to bang, slip, or mess up that gap. So I got to be very careful when I'm inserting it. Once I feel it on there, I'm going to twist, and you got to be very careful that you don't cross thread them, because again, cross threading is not something that you want to have. And slowly feed it on. Now it should go on pretty easy. As you can see, I'm able to twist this in with my fingers, and if I'm able to go around right here with my fingers, I know I'm not cross threading it by any means whatsoever. I'm going to twist that down until my fingers can no longer get that to twist on. Now again, this is going right into the combustion chamber, so once you get it finger tight, you don't want to leave it finger tight. So you're going to take your tool or your wrench, set it right back onto your extension. Switch it so you're torquing, again, right tight. And we're going to twist it and torque it all the way down. Alright, now you don't want to over torque it, but just enough that you can feel it stop and you have pressure on it, you're good. I'm going to remove my wrench, and I'm just going to give a wiggle, pull this out, and double check that my rubber core is in there. And I'm checking again to see that the rubber core is in there, because if I go on to the next one and I try to put this on, and it doesn't go on, or you'll go on, but I don't feel it click on, and I spin this out and I go to pull it out, now I've got a loose spark plug dangling around there. And to add insult to injury, I got a spark plug down there that has a rubber sleeve sitting over the top head of it. So I got to do two things. I got to figure out a way to fish this spark plug out that's just dangling in there, and because it's dangling, now it's probably angled down against the wall and the socket's not going to want to go on it correctly. And two, I got to pull this one that I just installed back out to get that rubber core off it, because with that rubber core on it, this boot isn't going to go on, and the boot's not going to make contact with the spark plug. I'm going to move on to my next one. Again, insert it down. Just give a twist until I feel it pop on. Alright, I know it's on. Click on my wrench. I'm going to go to the left. Get my wrench on again, to the right, and torque it down. And once you have your spark plugs in, you can insert your coil right on top. Again, I'm going from the standard coils. Now I'm going to hang on to these in case one of these goes bad. But we can switch out to our upgraded coil. Again, these are the MSD blaster coils. Again, with the coil, you want to align your legs or your boots inside of the well. This one you got to kind of arc and angle back, slide it down inside, and once you have it on, you got to push down until you feel it the boot engage with the spark plug, and you'll feel it bite. See, if I give a little tug, it's not slipping out. That's on the spark plug. Align your screws.
What is the difference between these ones and the regular ones?
The regular ones have only so much voltage that they put out for the spark plug itself. This puts out a much higher voltage, and when you're dealing with jumping a gap, the higher the voltage, the better off it is. A higher voltage will jump a further gap and will create an increased area for where an ignition can occur. So it increases the area of ignition for combustion, and thus helps the entire combustion chamber ignite the fuel-air mixture inside of the chamber. You go back to your tool. Torque down your screws or your bolts. And once that is on, you can take your wire and reinstall your wire. Now you've just changed out the ignition coil and the spark plugs for that cylinder. And you just continue on for all 8 cylinders, and that's the way it's done. Now I did forget to mention one thing. These engines come with a engine cover. The engine cover is held in by a ball and socket lock, which this is the socket. If I give a twist off here, this is what the engine cover looks like when it sits on top, and this is your socket lock. So this sticks off of one of the bolts, and this just goes on inside there. So all you really need to do is to get this cover off so you can access these electrical components. Is you just grab hold of it and give it a good hard jerk straight up, and that's how you take these off from there. But anyways, thanks for watching my video. Click like and subscribe if you'd like to see some more. And again, my next video will probably be doing an oil change, because my oil change indicator came on when I fired this up to go get some groceries this morning. So thanks for watching.